Welcome to episode 6 of Malaise 2026. The finals match is going to be between Chrom and Ken. Going to be on Smashville for this one. Now, this is going to be a best of 5, which means that if you win 3 matches, then you're not the grand loser of 2026. And if you lose 3 matches, you are. I should mention that there is the little bit of a chance for spoilers to happen in that the YouTube chapter function, which we've been using because I'm sure it helps people navigate from video to video. Let's just watch one match at a time if you so choose. And even without it, you could still get spoiled based off of the length of the match, but you can tell if you scroll through the video, if there's 3 matches, then it means that for sure whoever wins the first match is winning all 3, because that's the only way to get 3 matches, because the set doesn't end until someone's won 3 times. However, if there's 4 or 5, then you don't actually know. I guess if someone wins the first 2 matches, then you know they're going to win on round 4 if there's only 4 matches. But it does get more complicated, and at least it means you don't have the result guaranteed after the first match. Going off stage, Ken able to get on stage before getting not stage spike, before just getting normal spike by Cloud. There's a little bit of a gap where, oh, great spike by Ken, where Chrom can still grab the ledge and spike an opponent. There are factors that go into it. For example, a character with a bigger body is more likely to bounce off the stage. Going off stage, Chrom makes it back, eats a throw from Ken. Getting clipped by the recovery. That's something that Ken's recovery, Ryu's does as well, but Ken's is the fiery fist throughout the whole Shoryuken. It actually combos into the killing hit at the end of the move instead of at the beginning. So it's more beneficial for Ken to clip his opponent in that way. Up tilt to third up tilt getting countered. That's the kind of gameplay you see in the late stage main Malaise. Chrom actually recovered just high enough to hit Ken with his sword a little bit, which did deal extra damage. Ken was actually in a predicament there because Chrom was on a platform and therefore able to throw out pretty much any kill move he so chose. He didn't actually hit Ken with it. Ken recovering high, probably a good choice there, since his other option was to wait longer and try to snap the ledge. Chrom whiffing a grab, Ken actually doing a good job of jumping over it. So in a lot of fighting games, if you are airborne, you cannot be grabbed. That is not true in Smash Ultimate. If you are airborne, you can be grabbed. It is... And Ken went unnecessarily low. He was at a high percent, so it's not too devastating. So, in Smash Ultimate, if you are airborne, you can absolutely be grabbed. However, since you will be jumping off the ground, and most characters can only grab when they are on the ground, your odds of getting grabbed are significantly lower. Because unless you're jumping up to someone on a platform that they can do a standing grab on the platform, then it's almost impossible to get grabbed while you're airborne. Again, there are exceptions, and Chrom did not make that recovery. Last stock situation, Ken 42% behind, took a hefty chunk of shield damage. At that point, that's when I'd recommend rolling away. Ken made it back up, and then he jumped away from the ledge, and then he wasn't able to grab the ledge. Our second match is going to be between, you guessed it, Chrom and Ken. Gonna be on Gamer for this one. This is a hazards off rule set, so we shouldn't have to worry about mom in the background. I believe her name is 9 Volt. Chrom off stage. Able to recover. Ken actually got a phantom footstool off on him. So for anyone who doesn't know what a phantom footstool is, you can footstool opponents pretty much whenever. However, there's a lot of... Ken air dodging off stage, able to grab the ledge. I doubted, but he was able to not kill himself. Back to phantom footstools. You can footstool opponents basically whenever. However, if they're committed to a certain action, and there's... Well, it's more than one type of action, to be honest. But if your opponent's in the middle of an action, you get the footstool jump off of their head, but they don't get put into the getting footstooled animation. It's actually really important when trying to footstool opponents off stage, because then it's actually a very useful technique to have. However, if your opponent's using any sort of up special or honestly any sort of attack animation, it just doesn't work. You still do get the footstool jump, so you don't have to worry about accidentally killing yourself if you get it. But if you're going off stage to footstool an opponent, it's normally because you're trying to get them to not survive. So the fact that it effectively does nothing to the opponent is a little disappointing. I do get why it's necessary. A lot of characters would be pretty unfairly bricked if they could get footstooled out of any sort of recovery. And even then, the easiest time to get footstool on someone is actually right after they use their double jump, because most characters won't be using an attack out of that because they're trying to grab the ledge. And if they're not trying to grab the ledge, they're going to be using their up special. And if they use any sort of aerial to try to cancel the footstool ability of themselves, that messes up when they can use their up special. From auto healing to 0.1% for a second there. It's not quite completely healed, but basically, and now he gets it. Actually gets a parry on Ken and starts getting a lot of damage up on him. Chrom definitely a character that, well, he hits hard and has a lot of hitboxes that can kind of come out of, I'd say it comes out of nowhere. It's obviously coming out of his sword. But if you kind of panic against him, you can lose a life pretty quick. Ken once again able to recover, not seeming to be troubled by the edge of the table there. There might be an invisible slope corner there, specifically so recoveries don't get bricked a lot. Even if there's not, though, it's close enough to the legs of the table, which I believe act as walls. Back here, able to take Ken's second stock. Ken actually successfully rolling through the final hit of Dancing Blade. You can actually tell which direction Chrom's using when you use the move. So you can angle it in the center, or you can angle it up or angle it down. Whenever Chrom angles it center or forward, which are practically the same, the sword turns red. Whenever he angles it up, it turns blue, and whenever he angles it down, it turns green. So the final hit being the downwards direction is where you get the multi-stab technique. You'll see it a lot because I believe it on all the characters with Dancing Blade, it does the most damage. Party up smash from Ken into the jab, jab, nothing. And he actually cancels into a Shoryuken. I'm so proud, he's learning. Chrom recovering, landing on the stage, but Ken rolls behind him so he's unable to punish properly. Chrom doing a pretty good job keeping Ken stuck against the ledge. It's not a absolutely terrible position to be in, but it does cut down on your options. Since if you want to retreat, you have to jump off stage, and for a lot of characters, that's just not a great option. Chrom getting a great... I don't know if I can call that a read, because it kind of looked like he reacted to the roll there. But he did get a great punish on the roll. That time trying to punish a neutral tech, but Ken rolled once again. Oh, Ken got footstool off of Chrom there. So Chrom is obviously in the worst position, being at a higher percent. A lot more things will kill him. Pretty sure an up special is practically guaranteed at this point. However, Ken is starting to get around the range where the right move will kill him, and it's actually a footstool that does it. Chrom's not able to grab the ledge. Round 3 is going to be between Chrom and Ken. Again. Chrom getting off with a very aggressive dash at first. Ken's actually the first to deal any damage, though. Gonna be a little bit tough for Ken in that his landings are, unless Chrom decides to charge his neutral special, Ken's landings are gonna be pretty easy for Chrom to catch, simply just because Chrom's very fast on the ground, and Ken has very committal jumps as a Street Fighter character. Basically, in order to change where he's gonna land, he usually needs to commit to using his double jump, and that can be a tough commitment to make. You do get a little bit of aerial velocity influence, but it's not a lot. So it usually doesn't change whether or not the opponent's going to end up hitting you unless they're only just barely making it to you in time. Chrom actually grabbed the ledge after all of that. Jab jab to nothing at the ledge, the Ken classic. Gets Chrom off stage, and Ken successfully recovers but gets get up attacked for his trouble. Chrom goes for an edge guard but successfully recovers instead. Not the worst way that could have gone for him. Ken makes it back to stage, gets back thrown. Chrom does not have a killing back throw, as you just saw, it barely sent anywhere. It's one of those throws that has to send you far enough that it can't combo at basically any given percent, so it has to have base knockback, and then they don't want you to kill with the back throw, so they give it basically no knockback growth. Up air is able to take the first stock. Both amiibo playing footsies. Ken gets the first blood of Chrom's second stock. And I should have said he gets the first blood of Ken's first stock. Second stock. Jab jab sure you can, Ken's learning. Cancels the, believe that was down air. It looks pretty similar to the neutral air, because they're both downward kicks. But now that I think about it, I don't remember if Ken's neutral air looks more like his forward air than it does like his down air. Jab jab up smash, not a true combo, but he did land it on Chrom. That's kind of Ken's character in a nutshell. He has a lot of combos that just aren't quite true. You can't depend on them. However, if your opponent doesn't know that, then I guess you kind of just get to go hog wild. You know, because hogs are traditionally known for being very wild, rambunctious creatures. And not just lounging around in the mud all day. Both characters successfully make it back to the stage. Ken unable to pressure Chrom well off stage. It is actually a rather difficult thing for Ken to do, since he's only so good off stage, he doesn't get to go too far for extreme edge guards. So as a result, he has to depend on his ledge trapping. And he only has so much to do in terms of ledge trapping as well. He doesn't really have anything that can hit below the ledge. Like, I'm sure down smash will hit characters with really big heads and tiny arms. And there are some of those in this game, but there are only so many of those. So aside from that, he only has so many options to try to pressure the opponent getting back on stage. Back throw, sending Ken just far enough away to not be comboable. Up smash, not enough to kill Chrom. Stage has a little bit of a higher blast zone. Similar to a lot of other stages in this rule set, it's actually because of all the floating platforms that appear from time to time. If the top blast zone was any lower than those platforms, while standing on it, you could kill opponents very early. So to make it less early, they have a higher upper blast zone. But that doesn't mean whenever the platforms aren't present, it's just a very high blast zone. There's some of those platforms coming in right now. Every once in a while, the platforms will fly up away from the stage. Ever since, I believe, Smash 4, they made it pretty much established that if a platform is carrying you off screen, that the platform will despawn before you hit the top blast zone. I should mention that in certain boss fights in games, I'm actually thinking of a very specific attack Master Hand does in Smash 4, is he actually makes platforms that carry you off the top of the screen. So those are different, because that's in a boss fight. And boss fights can break a couple of normal Smash Brothers established rules. And they kind of have to in order to function. Ken combos into Shoryuken, but he only gets one hit of it. Multi-hits can be a little unreliable. They seem to make them more reliable with each game, but there is still always a chance of an opponent falling out of them. Chrom goes for an up special, the Ether Recovery. So something to know about Chrom's up special is that he copied Ike's up special, whereas most of his other moveset is copied off of Roy's moveset. I do think that thematically it's actually kind of cool in that he got to effectively steal from two Fire Emblem characters. It seems to be that the intention was actually made because Ike's up special is worse at recovering than Roy's, at least it's normally seen to be so. So Chrom makes up for not having all the sour spots on his moves like Roy does, but by having a worse recovery. Now, Chrom being a faster character, he actually gets more mileage out of it than Ike does. But in one of the patches in Smash Ultimate, they actually buffed Ike's Ether to kill at a significantly earlier percent. And Chrom never got that buff. So he's working off of the unbuffed version of Ether. And he actually has a harder time hitting opponents with the sword because there's no hitbox until Chrom physically grabs the sword, whereas Ike basically gets a combo hitbox the whole way. That looked like a forward smash. That's going to take the match for Chrom. And for this match, we're going to be having Chrom against Ken. Yeah, the intro kind of breaks down once you start having the same characters fighting over and over again. Chrom immediately retreats to the ledge. Ken almost kills himself, but then doesn't. Chrom might not be able to recover. He just barely... he actually gets on top of the ledge. And Ken isn't able to recover. This might be a pretty quick match if the amiibo keep trying to play on the rock. Especially because both of these characters have more easily whiffed recoveries. Both characters going off stage, and Ken not able to grab the rock. So if Ken kills himself trying to grab the rock for a third time, that's going to be it. Just tournament's over, because that means that Chrom will have gotten his third win. Currently, Chrom has 2 wins. Ken has 1 in this set. And I didn't think I'd have to explain it this fast, but I also didn't think that someone would kill themselves twice so quickly. Footstool. Chrom's not able to recover. That's 1 out of 3 stocks Ken needs to take. This match definitely going a lot faster than the last. Ken bouncing off of the stage. and then retreating right back to the rock. I guess if you live by the rock, you die by the rock. Ken edit. Starting to get to a dangerously high percent. Barely grabbing the rock yet again. Fading back and then not recovering has kind of been the hallmark of his gameplay this episode and last. Ken barely able to grab the rock yet again. I'm a little in disbelief every time it happens, simply because I've seen how it's failed before. Ken goes for the wrong ledge, and that's gonna be Malaise 2026. So Chrom won, so he is not the ultimate loser, but that means that Ken is. Both amiibo are getting retrained, but out of all the amiibo, Ken performed the worst. So just know that. And that concludes it for the 2026 tournament season. Normally, I'd spoil the new amiibos that would be coming up for next year, but we've actually completed the entire set, if you can believe it. It took a while to get there, especially because some of the amiibo were still being released, and release dates and whatnot, and I wasn't willing to pay a 200% markup to get some of these guys. But yeah, we've done it. We've got all the amiibo. We've got all the tournament season. Guess I'll see you guys next year. I do have some things planned between now and then, so you don't have to wait 10 months if you want to see this content again. But I also can't promise anything because it's, well, different, to be honest, more experimental. Thank you all for staying with us on this journey. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.